let's get started. So I'm going to start recording this. And again, um, thank you guys for showing up today. So couple things. The department asked me or asked the faculty to share list, to share this information for you guys about the Econ Club, the undergrad Econ Club. Um, so they suggested that we share this information for you, and you can scan that QR code if you want, and information of what they do and meetings. It says there Monday 7 to 8. It started already this past Monday, and there's an address down there. I'm going to leave this in the notes that I'm going to upload in the Moodle. So in case you're interested in this information. I don't know much about these clubs, but I guess you probably know more about it. And if you're interested in the Econ Club, then you can get this information and check it out. Also, I wanted to do a quick poll on couple things that I wanted to know. One on if you have had any game theory in the past in another econ course or business or management course. And also, how is the term paper idea going? So if you can answer those two there, that would be great. So, okay, so I'm seeing there 15 of you already answered. That's good. And I'm getting here some team. Good, 18. Let me give you just 10 more seconds. Jesse is just connecting right now. So Jesse, if you can get your poll answers there, thank you very much. That would be great. So I hope the poll option is working for all of you, but it looks like, I think I have only one person missing that hasn't completed. It might be Jesse who is just coming in. Okay, so
I think I just answered the
You did? Okay.
Yeah, it should show
Oh,
up.
I'm missing someone else. It says here 21 of 22. Wait, unless I am the 22nd. Sometimes I don't know if that I am the 22nd or not. Probably I am. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. So good. It looks like some of you have had some game theory in the past. That's great because we can do a recap today. And for those of you who didn't, but you read the chapter 4, I'm going to give you the basics today. And with the reading, you should be able to catch up with the others. And we'll see how that goes with the polling today. In terms of the paper idea, I see that 8 of you haven't started yet. So please let me know if you have questions. But basically Tuesday, I covered some of the basics of what you're going to do. And in the Moodle, you have the instructions. And the rest of you have already thought about it. Some of you are even ready to upload it. So we will see how that goes in that sense. Great. Okay, Tino, this is due on tomorrow at 8 p.m. Wait, 10 p.m. 10 p.m. I think it's what I said. And it's basically a page and a half, somewhere between 500 and 800 words. But check in the Moodle assignments, the instructions, and tomorrow I will be getting those and getting feedback to you probably over the weekend so that next week you can get some reactions to that. Okay, so moving on, this is where we are in terms of our plan. So let me just say a few words on that. If you remember in our first part in this introduction about the last 1,000 years, the capitalist revolution and what the market economy has done, that's what we covered up until last class. And the issue of growth and how much is growth permitted because of the limits, the physical limits of the earth. And then from then on, looking at some of these issues of whether we can continue growth and producing well-being as we have seen it in this hockey stick trajectory that we have seen in so many variables. So that was the motivation as a start. We are going to come back to these issues in much more detail in further sections when we enter into the issues of the market and externalities and public policy. But now we're going to move into this second section on the micro foundations. And as I said before, we're going to move from the macro to the micro. And when I say the micro is basically the way people interact, how agents interact among each other. And if this works out today, we'll see with the experiment, we will do a testing of these things. And so we will see in a couple of minutes if the experiment is working this time. At least I was testing that yesterday and this morning, and the website seemed to be working. So we will see. But what I want to achieve in these 2 weeks, week 3 and 4, is this idea of getting a little bit of game theory. It's going to be a refreshment for some of you. It's going to be a new learning for others. But in general, how we analyze how humans interact, or agents in general interact, with a little bit of the game theory language, the jargon, and the instruments that we use to analyze these issues. And then in the 4th week, next week, we're going to focus on the issues of externalities and social dilemmas. And you started reading in chapter 4 about the social dilemmas in general. And in fact, I'm going to do a couple poll quizzes to see how you are capturing those concepts. But in general, what I want you to think here is that we want to inquire about these mechanisms that make or guide human behavior, and how that human behavior, the social interactions, because of the different motivations that humans have to act, create outcomes, create situations and consequences for humans. And sometimes those consequences are desirable, and in some other cases they are not. And if you remember the experiment we had in the first day of class with this market, in which we had this problem of climate change at the end, well, you saw that we could witness with the same people in the same experiment, just comparing the first rounds to the later rounds, that the same people, the same humans with the same rationality, can produce quite an incredibly successful and efficient economic machine through the market, and produce well-being for everyone. And yet, when we consider the consequences of those actions to the environment, and how the environment hits back to people and directly to their pockets, then we are back into dealing with the consequences of the social interactions. And that's pretty much what we are going to be trying to understand. And this is why we will be using the language of game theory from this chapter 4 or unit 4 from core, and study these social interactions in that sense. So without any more introduction, let me give you also some questions on that chapter 4. And these are just 4 questions to see how much you were grabbing from the reading. So there they are. And let me pause the recording to resume the recording and continue here then with what we are going to do. So let's see if our experiment is going to work. And I want you to remember what happened in the first experiment, the first day, with the market for cars, and the difference between, if you remember here, when we had the first 3 rounds in which we had no regulation or intervention, but also no externalities. And then we moved to the next 3 rounds, and there were these externalities in which you were paying out of your own pocket the consequences of the aggregation of the production and consumption of cars. And what I want you to think about that is, how is this particular setting in those last 3 rounds, which probably resemble more reality today of the market economy, how the 3 concepts that we went through in terms of private property, the emergence of markets and the emergence of firms would deal with the case in which we are not dealing only with private goods like cars, but also public bads or environmental bads or environmental goods, if you want to, in the case of the positive side, associated with climate change, right? What happens with the firms? Are firms able to produce this? Are firms capable of producing and markets of creating and private property to be assigned to produce environmental goods? Is that possible? That's going to be an open question. And to what extent the interaction of these three components of private property, firms, and markets are capable of dealing with the problems that we saw in those three rounds that we were talking. And for studying that is that I want to get into the micro foundations and start thinking about the use of game theory to analyze these decisions, okay? So we are going to be using the jargon and the tools of game theory today and next week. And we are going to be dealing with several issues. One of them is the rationality that humans use to make their own decisions. And here, in this text in core, I think there is a richer and more complex presentation of what humans are, the real humans. If you have had an introductory economics class in the past, you were probably exposed to the idea of the Homo economicus model, in which rational humans, sometimes called econs instead of Homo sapiens, these econs are selfish maximizers of their own self-interest. And that is problematic. It's problematic for one big reason. And that big reason is that reality doesn't support that claim. All of you here, and probably many people that you know, sometimes can be altruistic, sometimes they can be reciprocal, sometimes they can be generous, sometimes they can refrain from acting on their own self-interest and act on behalf of others. And sometimes it's kin, and you can understand why towards kin, your relatives, your descendants, you can be especially selfless and you can be especially altruistic, but even with strangers, with total strangers. And the evidence is quite robust. Again, I'm not saying everyone is like that, and I'm not saying everyone acts like that all the time. So all of us here meeting today can remember probably in the last year an act of pure selfish behavior and an act of pure altruistic behavior and other acts that can be even thought as irrational, and we are being ourselves all the time. So there are situations, conditions, determinants, incentives, rules, cultures, norms that are guiding all the time how we eventually at some point we act in one way and in other points we act in another way. And this is part of what we are going to be studying throughout this second part of the course this week and next week. And that has to do with how we deal with individual interests and collective interests, or the common good. And in particular, how we deal with the trade-offs and sometimes the difficult trade-offs between efficiency and fairness. And by efficiency and fairness, back again to the idea of a pie. Again, we want to produce the biggest pie possible. And then we want to distribute that pie in the most rapid way to get to the most of people. But sometimes, and this is common throughout history, the history of humankind, and very often, humans will care also about the fairness in the production and the distribution and the final allocation of that pie. Who gets which slice? Who decides how to cut up the slices? Who gets to decide who owns the slices? And sometimes the pie is as material and clear as a pizza or a cake, but sometimes it's much more complicated, like getting electricity out to people, or getting heating out to people, or getting environmental protection and ecosystem services to people. And it is not easy. But what we are doing always in economics is trying to use those tools and learning from other disciplines to how to study, how to produce the biggest pie possible and distribute it in the most fair possible way. And when I say fair, it doesn't have to be exactly egalitarian. It could be in many other ways. There are non-egalitarian but fair distributions of opportunities or distributions of outcomes. And we will be talking about that a lot later in the course when we get into the issues of justice and distributional issues in the environment and in general in the economy. And finally, at the end of this second module of the course, I want to get a conversation on what kind of human do we need to navigate this Anthropocene in the coming century. If we want to get by, and at the end of the 21st century, right, in the year 2100, what kind of rationality, of human rationality, are we going to need to produce the economic system, the political system, the social system that will sustain the possibility that you guys, but especially your children and your grandchildren, are going to make it all the way to the end of the 21st century, and at the end say, wow, these guys at the turn of the 20th century to the 21st shifted, they guided the ship in the right direction, okay? And for that, we are going to need many things aligned in terms of the rationality of humans, in terms of the economic incentives, in terms of the political system, in terms of the economic systems, in terms of property rights, in terms of innovation, to be able to do this, okay? And for that, we're going to be using, for that analysis to start, using tools from game theory. So I am going to start with this basic game in which I am showing here a payoffs function. This is just a random game that you can think of. Don't always think that all games are prisoner's dilemmas. That's always a mistake. I have my own personal problems with the prisoner's dilemma as a metaphor and as a narrative, and I will talk about that later. But here, basically, we have a game with two players. One is called the row player and the other one is called the column player. And before I go any further, let me ask you, just as a refresher, for those of you who have done any game theory in the past, and for the others who read chapter 4, let me ask you quickly 4 questions of verification of your understanding of these basics of game theory. So here they are. So these are 4 simple questions that I want you to look at. So I am going to share with you all these Paul's questions on Moodle and with the right answers so that you can recap and see those and go over your notes, your reading of the text and the class notes and so on, so that you can also identify what your weak spots are and in which areas you are still missing some of the understanding. Also, I am going to be collecting, now that we have a few set of poll sessions, I'm going to be collecting all this data, and I'm going to be looking at the accuracy of your answers, and not only the participation, but the accuracy. And I'm going to give you that information back, so I'm going to post it. So probably this weekend, I'm going to sit down and collect all this information so that you can get a little bit of feedback, and then you begin to connect the dots and see if your success in answering correctly the questions is part of the result of your understanding and reading. And if you're having trouble with some questions, is it because of it is difficult to follow the book, or is difficult to follow me, or follow the notes, or the class itself? And therefore we can get some feedback between you and me. But I also want to see how clear I am conveying some of these issues for you guys. Okay, so with that in mind, let me then move quickly to the experiment. So here's what we're going to do. And let's see if this time it works. So I'm going to put this link in the chat room in a second, and then I will give you the session name for you to log in. Again, you will be paired with another student, and you will never know who that person is. And it's going to be the same pairings throughout the experiment over the first 5 rounds. And in fact, we're going to be able to play another 5 rounds. Let's see if it works. And if that works, you will be able to earn some experimental payoffs that will accumulate to your participation in games. Again, remember, how much money you make in the games will not affect your grade, but your participation in the games, regardless of your decisions, will affect your grade. Okay, and I keep always reminding students of this. But how much money you make in the games does affect your account of earnings throughout the semester. And at the end of the semester, I'm going to randomly pick a couple of you, and I'm going to make sure that you get a prize. And if that prize is effectively cash or money or credit to your U card or a present or something, is going to be proportional to how much money you make in the games. Okay, so one more reminder, remember, if you log out after you have logged in with your name and the ID number, and you need to log in again, do not do it with this login button, but use this emergency restart option, please, so that we can get that working. And so let's see if I can now open up here the browser. So let me give me 1 second, Beacon Lab. So you are going to be logging in as an as a student. So use this link here so that you are all in the login page. And now let me enter as a administrator to start running the game, and I will tell you in a second the session name that we are going to be using. And okay, so the session name is going to be EXPS3, okay? So you use that one, EXPS3, and let's see how that goes. And let me stop here the recording so you don't use up much of the grid and the cloud. Resume the recording here. So let me show you quickly the summary of what just happened here, okay? And here you see a graph, and we're going to be seeing the 10 rounds. So here in the left, you will see rounds 1 through 5 of the first game, which is this game here that says treatment 1, in which if you play, let's say you're the row player, you play top, and the other player column plays left, they both earn 1 and 3 respectively, or 2 and 2, 4 and 4, 3 and 10. And here, let's see what happened. So let's show the following round. And here you see the frequency of people playing in red. These red dots is the frequency of people playing left, the column players playing left, and the frequency of people in blue, the blue dots, the frequency of people playing top. Okay, and if we look at the 3, 4, 5 rounds, you can see a stark, clear difference. Okay, so that's saying the row players, most of them chose bottom. Only a very few cases you see row players choosing top. Okay, so they wanted to go to these $4 payoffs or these $3 payoff. And notice something, this 4 is better than 1. and this 3 is better than 2. That's going to be key for what we're going to be doing, okay? In the meantime, look at the column players. The column players were doing most of the time, and in fact, notice even the last 2 rounds, everybody was playing right. I mean left, okay? Which means that if most people in the column players were playing left, and most people in the row players were playing bottom, everybody was ending in this $4 payoff, okay? Okay, so notice the possibilities here. The possibilities are earning 1 and 3, 2 and 2, 4 and 4, 3 and 1. And most of the times you ended up in the 4-4 corner of the matrix, in the bottom left place, okay? Okay? And we will be talking about why we think that's the case, why most of the time you ended up in that bottom left corner of that first payoff matrix. And now let's look at the results for the next game, which is the bottom matrix that you see there. And what I mean is the following. Let me see if I can. Did I lose? Yeah. So let me share again here, yeah, and move this here. And what I want you to see is, wait, yeah, you can see my mouse, right? Can you see my mouse moving? Yeah. So I'm going to go to the next round. This is round 6. Okay. And then round 7. Again, blue dots are the proportion of row players playing top, and red dots are the proportion of players playing left. And now this is changing dramatically. So you can see that now these people here are starting, the red dots, now it's going down to 60%, to 30%, 35%. Let's see what happens in the next round. Now it went up to 60%, then it went to, again, about 60 something percent. Now went down to less than 40% in the case of the red dots. And again, if we see the difference between all these dots and all these dots in the first 5 rounds, is when we are beginning to think of how is it that incentives, rules, information are key to understand why people behave the way they do, okay? And again, what I want you to think is, why is it that the same human beings, because this is the same you guys during all 10 rounds, decided to switch strategies? Now, notice, in the first 5 rounds, you were able to get to this 4-4 outcome. And there are some interesting, nice features of that 4-4 outcome. For example, that's the largest pie that you can produce in that game. The other pies are 1 and 3, that's 4, 2 and 2, that's 4, 3 and 1, that's 4. But 4 and 4, that's 8. That 8 is the largest pie you can produce in that economy of the first 5 rounds. Secondly, the pie is quite equally divided. So both row player and column player are probably satisfied in the sense that out of the $8, each got 4, right? And if we care about fairness, and you are reading about that in chapter 4, eventually this will satisfy you in one dimension of your utility function. By that I mean in the expression of your preferences that map outcomes to your satisfaction. Definitely for the blue payments, look at the blue payments. 4 is better than 3, is better than 2, is better than 1. 4 is the max possible, the maximum possible. But now look at the game in the second stage. Where do we have the maximum pi in that second game? Can anyone tell us? Where do we produce the largest pi possible in the second treatment, in treatment 2?
3 and 3 for top left.
Exactly. We can produce 6. It's not 8 anymore, but we can produce 6. Now, that's the largest pi. To reach 3 and 3, we need that the blue dots are all the way up there, so that the proportion top is 100%, is 1. But they are not there. They are like halfway. But we also need that the red dots are also way up there, and they are not all the way up there. They are like halfway, right? So that means that in some cases, in some matches, and I am going to show you the data once we finish class today. I will download the data and send it to you or post it to you in Moodle, and we will go back to this later. Why is it that you guys, the same human beings, are capable in the first 5 rounds to produce the maximum social well-being possible, and at the same time getting the maximum possible for each of your pockets? Namely, $8 for everyone, for each pair, $4 for each. And yet in the next 5 rounds, that was way harder to achieve, because we don't see everybody at the 3-3 payoffs. Sometimes, and it did happen sometimes, I can see here from the data, but I'm not going to show you the data, but I can see that in some cases, there was a nice match of top by the row player and left by the column player, and they matched and eventually achieved the 3-3. But in other cases, you ended up in the 2-2 or the 4-1 or the 1-4, which are both inefficient and or unequal. And depending on whether you got the 4 and the other person got the 1, that might not only imply less social efficiency, but also an unequal outcome that might bother you. And it might bother you in both directions. Imagine that you try to play a strategy to divide the pie more equally, and you ended up with the 4 and the other person ended up with the 1, and you feel a little bit bad because you didn't achieve a more balanced or equal outcome, or the other way around, that you got the 1 and the other person got the 4. And in that case, it means that you are reaching a situation in which you were unfairly treated in the distribution of the final outcome. Okay, so again, think of the reasons why with these 2 particular games, so many of you reached the best outcome in terms of fairness and efficiency, and in the second stage, in the second treatment, you did not. Okay, by now you probably recognized those payoffs from the reading of chapter 4, and those are exactly the payoffs of chapter 4. By that I mean the first game is this game of Anil and Bali, who are 2 farmers who need to decide whether to plant rice or cassava. And in the first 5 rounds, they end up specializing each of them in one product, getting the maximum possible out of the price of the market, and both doing quite well. But then in the second game, which is treatment 2 here, is the same story in the book of these 2 farmers, but in this case is the decision of what kind of pest control they are going to use. Whether an integrated pest management control that doesn't use pesticides, that doesn't pollute the water, that doesn't harm your neighbors, or you use this killer, weed killer that uses heavily pesticides and therefore ends up harming both farmers and take them to the worst case scenario. Okay, so that's that for today. And I'm glad we were able to reach the entire experiment. And I want you to think with those numbers in the screen. Again, I will send this to you. I want you to think with the reading of chapter 4, what are the reasons about these games that let us understand why we see so much difference between the first 5 rounds and the last 5 rounds. Okay, so that's it. And thank you guys for coming. I'll see you on Tuesday, and I will be working on some of this data and send it back to you. Don't forget, tomorrow at 10 p.m. is the deadline for sending your term paper idea. Okay? Okay. See you guys. Crystal, I will look at those numbers and send them to you of what was the greatest cumulative earning, but I won't reveal names, but I will tell you what was, so that you know from your own data. Okay? Okay, guys. See you on Tuesday. Okay.
Thank you.
Real quick.
Bye-bye. Have a great day. Great weekend.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So the term paper is supposed to be on what exactly?
So at the end of the semester, if you look at the syllabus, there's going to be a term paper that is a fraction of the grade. Okay. And that paper is going to be your own analysis of any particular environmental challenge that you're interested, that you think is interesting, and we can run some ideas. And what you're going to be writing for tomorrow is one possible idea. In fact, if you want to write 2 ideas, that's fine too. Any environmental challenge that you think is interesting, either in your town, your neighborhood, your state, your country, the planet, wherever you want, and a description, and in the Moodle there are the instructions on how you're going to be using the tools of the course to address that environmental challenge.
Okay, and then secondly, I just want to make sure I'm not like missing any assignments, because I feel like we haven't had very many yet in the class. Are there any like specific assignments besides like just like the working up to the term paper, besides just reading the chapters?
Things that you are handing out to me is this term paper idea tomorrow.
Okay.
And the other part of the grade so far has been on participating in the experiments, like we did today, and like we did the first day of class, and participation in the Zoom polls. Not the accuracy of the answers, just the participation in those Zoom polls, in the quiz. Okay.
I just want to make sure, because I felt like I hadn't done anything really yet in the class besides like just being in the Zoom and doing the experiments. I wasn't sure if I had just been missing homework.
No, we have been doing a lot. We have been.
I don't mean like I have been doing any like
exactly.
like you know, like how classes like you have like a homework assignment to do every night. I just thought that I was like missing out on like the post class stuff that I was supposed to be doing. So key for tomorrow, this term paper idea, and in the Moodle are all the instructions and the link that you can use to upload that. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. I definitely have no complaints about how the class is running. By the way, I didn't mean to make it sound like I was. No. Don't worry. No. Don't worry. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Jesse, take care. Okay. Bye. Joseph, you had a question?
Yeah, I just have so I was saying during class, like I couldn't get in that experiment because it was like, I can read you the message. Like it said, like, there's no record of a login for you in this experiment. A possible cause of this error is that the instructor started a new experiment. So I was just wondering, like, will I lose credit for that? No. So can you share the screen with me? Let me give you, wait, let me give you, let me stop sharing here and show me what it says there, because it's, I'm intrigued. Let's see. Can you share with me what you're reading? Yeah, right there. Can you see that? It's coming. Yeah. So hold a second. There is no record of login, but it doesn't say. Can you go back in the browser? Go back. Hold a second. Wait, screen. Go back once again. One more. It doesn't. Now it says 21 out of 25. Yeah, that's weird. So it never says the session name that you used. Yeah, that's strange. So Joseph, I will do the same as with Tino. I will write down here. So of course I will give you credit for trying to participate, and I can see something went strange here. And as I said,
I will credit you with the average earnings of the rest for your accumulation of earnings for the price at the end. Okay.
Okay, and I
Yeah,
just
that's-
have one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the term paper. So you know how we have to put like you said like a couple articles in the
Yeah.
should we make it like a works cited page or just kind of like
I mean, at this point, it's more like, tell me what source inspired you. If it is
okay.
a video, a TED talk, a news article, something, and tell me what it is so that I can refer to it and then give you better feedback. Okay.
Okay.
For the term
All right,
paper
great.
at the end, I will be more strict in terms of how you reference your sources and the like.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Have a good one.
Stay warm. Bye-bye.
You too.
Liang, did you have a question? Liang, are you there? Liang, hello? Liang, are you there? Okay.